Let's now bring in 2024 GOP presidential candidate Larry Elder, who is from the People's Republic of California, my former home state. Larry, it's great to see you, my friend. By the way, you're the author of a book I got to get out there, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save the Nation. That book is going to be an important one. Larry, even though the bulk of her career, Dianne Feinstein, was regarded as a moderate, she did have her moments. Feinstein was one of the leaders of the false smear campaign against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. What do you think her legacy will be?
Her legacy will be that compared to how vitriolic politics are today, she's perceived to be somebody who reached across the aisle. And she did on certain kinds of legislations. She was still a California tax spend, regulate Democrat, ardent gun control type Democrat, but she wasn't mean-spirited. She wasn't like Adam Schiff. She wasn't like Maxine Waters. She wasn't like some of the other California Democrats out here. So her personality, her charm, her calmness, her even-handedness is something that you don't find now in American politics, at least in my opinion, on that side of the aisle. That's why you're finding bipartisan praise for her. From people like Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, people that knew her and worked with her, all thought that she was somebody that you could do business with.
Right, sum total over her entire career, I think you would regard her as someone who wouldn't demonize the other side and would try to find some areas of agreement. Larry, now I guess the big question is, California's Governor Gavin Newsom, a left-wing extremist, who do you think he's going to appoint to replace Feinstein? Do you think he will replace somebody in her vein, or will he go full tilt bozo, left-wing, socialist, and Marxist?
Well, door number two. Remember, this is a gender and identity race card playing guy in the gender identity race card playing party. When Bernie Sanders won the Nevada caucuses in 2020 and briefly became the front runner, remember James Clyburn, the longtime representative from South Carolina, endorsed Joe Biden on the eve of the South Carolina primary and got a promise from him that his first Supreme Court nominee would be a black female. Joe Biden, of course, has a running mate who's a black female. And Gavin Newsom, months ago, when it appeared that Dianne Feinstein might not serve out her term, promised to appoint a black female to succeed her. He then modified that and said, I'll appoint a black female to succeed her who's not running, which means he did not include Representative Barbara Lee, a black female who has announced her candidacy for the Senate. That cheesed off Lee, and she tweeted, "How dare you check off a box for a black female who'd only want to be an interim senator." So it didn't bother her that he checked the box that she'd be a black female. It bothered her that he checked the box that she would be an interim black female, meaning not Barbara Lee. So Gavin Newsom has painted himself into a corner. He's got to appoint a black female, but who he appoints, no idea.
Well, and just like Joe Biden before him, Gavin Newsom is a racist, because he is saying to Latino candidates, he's saying to white candidates, I'm not going to pick you. I'm going to discriminate against you brown people. I'm going to discriminate against you white people. By definition, that is a racist. Gavin Newsom and Joe Biden are both racists. Larry, staying with the People's Republic of California and their governor, Mr. Newsom, he just signed a bill implementing the first state tax on guns and ammunition, giving anti-constitutional regressives a big win. This measure also bans self-defense with a firearm in places like educational institutions, parks, and sporting events. Then he also sided with some common sense folks, maybe because he has aspirations for higher office, and he vetoed a bill that would have started a process if parents don't affirm their child's gender identity, the state gets to come in and take those kids away from those parents. He vetoed that bill. What do you think's going on with Mr. Newsom?
Well, it's interesting, Chris, how extremist he is. And then when it's clear that what he wants ticks off much of the country, he then backs away. For example, it was he who signed the legislation that set up the reparations panel. Then the panel meets and they determined that $1.2 million should be going to each black descendant of California. Then all of a sudden he said, whoa, 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 I had no idea they were going to go that far. I'm not necessarily in favor of cash reparations. So the California legislature, which is dominated by Democrats, supermajorities in the Senate and the Assembly, all assumed he'd sign this legislation that says If you are in a child custody fight and you don't affirm your child's gender, a judge could take you away from custody of that child. Even Gavin Newsom backed away from that. Regarding the gun control stuff, California is already the most ardent gun control state. We've got every single law you can possibly think of in California, and still we have mass shootings and more mass shootings per capita than anybody else. Every time I see this gun control stuff, I want somebody to stand up and say, Governor Newsom, how many Americans are alive every day because people were able to get their hands on a firearm and defend themselves? One study puts that number, Chris, at 1.25 million. Some even have it higher. Nobody ever talks about how many lives are saved by firearms. We just talked about how many lives are lost by firearms.
So true. And, you know, frankly, look at Los Angeles, look at San Francisco. They're not safe cities. All their gun bans have only resulted in the criminals becoming more emboldened, and businesses are fleeing California because, frankly, businesses can't survive there because the criminals are in charge in California. Hey, Larry, both in government and on the streets. Larry, Congress remains on track. They're heading into a government shutdown, as you know. House Republicans are divided on if they even want to rein in government's dangerous overspending. You know, our debt is going to hit, estimates show that our debt is going to hit $50 trillion within the next decade. Interest alone on that dollar figure will eclipse our defense spending. Can a Republican Party survive as a viable political party if an uncomfortable number of them believe in the childish Democrat overspending?
Can the country survive? We are borrowing $5 billion a day. And as you pointed out, pretty soon, interest on the debt will be the largest line item veto. In 1900, at all three levels, federal, state, local, Chris, government took 9% from the American people. Now it takes 32%. One of the many things I've said on the campaign trail is government gets bigger whether Republicans are in charge or Democrats are in charge. We are, of course, the party of fiscal responsibility, but that's a low bar. We need an amendment to fix spending to a certain percentage of the GDP. Otherwise, government gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Even Barack Obama and Bill Clinton referred to the entitlements programs as unsustainable, but nothing gets done because if you run to rein them in, you're going to lose elections because the other side will accuse you of not caring about the sick, the poor, the elderly. The only way to rein in spending is to tie government, the federal government's hands to an amendment to the Constitution, and you cannot run for re-election until you've reduced the government down to the size the founding fathers intended. That's the only way to rein in spending going forward.
Well, last thing I got for you, Larry, is Democrat presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's reportedly going to announce a run as an independent for president. First off, how successful do you think this is going to be? And isn't it telling the Democrat Party that is out there saying, we're fighting for democracy, and they're the ones denying their voters a choice in the upcoming primaries?
It's going to be fascinating. He could make a dent. And more likely, he's going to take away votes from the Democrats than from Republicans. I want to remind RFK Jr. That what's the guy's Ralph Nader could not get a table at Fatburger after he ran in 2000, and because of his name being on the ballot in Florida, it very likely allowed George W. Bush to carry that state. You haven't heard anything from Mr. Nader in a long time. He's still alive. His dog won't even sniff him. So RFK Jr. is going to be canceled by the Democratic Party if he does this. He already knows that, and apparently is courageous enough to take that on. That's pretty brave and pretty bold of him. Pretty courageous of him.
Yeah, well, RFK knows there's a certain segment of Democrats who are not into the socialist, Marxist bent of the Biden regime. However, they can never hold their nose and vote for somebody like Mitch McConnell or John Cornyn. So this independent run, he might appeal to a whole bunch of those disaffected Democrats. Larry Elder, thank you, sir. Appreciate the visit, as always.